Hey, this is Story with RAD Security, and today we're going to do a quick overview through the platform. So what do? We do behavioral, cloud native, detection, and response. So detection and response, that means we don't just detect bad stuff, we also help you respond to it. Cloud native, we're talking containers and Kubernetes, not, sometimes containers without Kubernetes, either or, doesn't matter, both of those. Behavioral, that's where it gets really fun. And that's what we're going to go through in this demo. So in cloud native and in zero-day attacks, attackers are really moving fluidly through two things. They're moving fluidly through identities. So Kubernetes RBAC, for example, or Cloud IAM. And then they're moving through infrastructure. So the cloud environment, the Kubernetes environment. And then, of course, in runtime and at the workloads is where we see and can detect a lot of what they're doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards. We're going to start at the detection of a potential event, and then we're going to go back into figuring out what's potentially behind that. But throughout all of this, we're also going to show you what you do. So let's just get started. Here's a dashboard. Immediately tells you which infrastructure issues you have with threat vectors, which identity issues you have here, and which drift events you have in your workloads. So starting with the end in mind, let's actually look at what might be potential incidents in your environment. So what we do here, these are not signatures. When we want to know what the behavioral element is, well, the behavioral element is that we take a fingerprint of your workloads. And you can see here, we're in the process of taking that fingerprint for 3,600 of them, but we've finished getting the fingerprint for some, and there's drift detected in them. Now, at runtime, containers exhibit certain patterns in their programs, processes, files, et cetera. And these things, the majority of the time, they happen consistently. So that's why we can confidently say, this is your fingerprint at runtime. And then we can say anything that is drift from that is a potential event. So beginning with the end in mind, where are all my potential actual events? This is what we're looking at. So let's go ahead and look at a fingerprint. And here you can see, okay, the workload, process, program, and here is the drift, right? And we can see it also in the YAML. We can see where the drift took place. More than that, though, let's see where we have done something about it. So you have the option to quarantine the workload, terminate the pod, label it, so you can actually respond in this case. So this is really behavior as code, right? That's what we've captured. And for this is possible. You don't, like, Kubernetes is not a requirement for being able to see this. You can point this at any containers in your environment. So, we talked before about attackers coming in through identity and through infrastructure. Let's see what might be behind this, right? Because we're beginning with the end in mind. Where's the detection? Where's the possible event? But now what's attached to it? So let's go to the identity side of things first. So immediately what you can see on this dashboard is that there are runtime alerts associated with multiple identities. And then we can go ahead and sort by the ones that have those. And let's go and look into this particular identity in more detail. So this is a service account that has had runtime alerts triggered by these particular identities. So it's trying to do these things that we know are malicious. And so we talked about behavioral before. So this is what is different from the RAD approach. Others will show you these, not just the behavioral fingerprints, because that's wildly different from signatures. From an identity perspective, what anybody else can show you is your potentially dangerous permissions. That's not really something special. But nobody else is attaching the behavior of the identity to these permissions and to other things that are happening in the environment. So the behavioral piece is here. You have runtime alerts attached to this identity. You have this identity trying to use a verb that generally, is an indicator that somebody's trying to view permissions they shouldn't be viewing. Based on a baseline we have created of this identity in its previous behavior. And also you can see many service account requests have been denied. So what do you do now? Well, you right size the identity. So we provide guidance as to how to right size your Kubernetes RBAC in this case. And this is the recommended code to switch out for your RBAC policies. So not just detecting what's wrong, but also what you can do about it. So last thing, let's look at the infrastructure, right? Attackers move fluidly through identities, infrastructure, and get to your workloads. So let's look at infrastructure. And here we'll go straight to threat vectors. So threat vectors are basically attack paths on steroids, all in real time. And it shows you all of the connected issues that might together signify or tell you where to prioritize your efforts. So in this particular case, there's a workload that has risky RBAC permissions, so on the identity side, and then it's exposed via ingress. And what can we do about this? Well, you can, from the misconfigurations perspective, you can fix all the findings with AI. You can go here. But then if we want to fix on the identity side, we can also see all of the identities associated with threat vectors. So the identity I showed before was not associated with the threat vector. It was just associated with runtime events, but these are. So these are all part of different attack paths. And here you can see what's involved, just like I showed before, and you can fix them, right? Straight from the get-go. Now, from a behavioral perspective, what is behavioral about this infrastructure view? Well, what's behavioral is that these are in real time, right? You're going to know to the minute when a new one of these pops up. And most customers, they see like 2 or 3 of these, which really separates the signal from the noise, much more than if you just had a list of vulnerabilities, for example. Speaking of vulnerabilities, the other way to fix this is we're going to show you let's say if we go to one with a vulnerability. So we know which vulnerabilities are reachable in here. So this shows you all the vulnerabilities that are associated with the privileged container in this threat vector. But what you can also do, we go to Container Insights and you click on one of those containers, you can see the ones that are reachable. In this demo environment, I actually don't have any that are reachable, but that's a really good way to further prioritize and further hone your shift left programs based on the events and the attack paths that you're seeing in your infrastructure, identities, and workloads. So to sum up, because we went through all of this super quickly, RAD is giving behavioral cloud native detection and response that shows incidents as they happen, right? And then also how you can fix them. And we give close-up, like microscopic close-ups into those particular tactics, techniques, and procedures that attackers are really after. So identity, infrastructure, and all the way to the detection in your workload. So to get your own behavioral profile, reach out to the team. That's it for me today. Thanks so much and stay rad.